Thank you, Mr. President. And I often wake up every morning and look in the mirror and wonder, am I still living in California? Because I don't recognize the state anymore. I'm a native Californian. I was brought up in a very low-income family. I remember shopping with my mother when my dad gave us $200 a week that had to pay for food, had to pay for insurance, had to pay for a mortgage, had to pay for school clothes. I learned quickly how to shop with coupons to make sure we got the best deals. And I was brought up to better myself, to have better opportunities than my parents and my grandparents had. I was encouraged to go to school. My grandfather came here 2 years old when he was from Russia and said, "Jeff, I didn't have an opportunity to get an education. I encourage you to lift yourself out of this poverty situation. Get an education and have a better life for your children than I was able to give for my children." But unfortunately, the state of California has changed. When I was growing up, we were the capital of aerospace. We were the capital of automobile manufacturing. We used to manufacture everything in the state of California. Jobs were plentiful. I lived in a post-World War II community. My parents bought a home for $15,000, 5 miles from Disneyland, called the Cinderella Homes. We didn't have much, but we had love, we had encouragement, and my parents urged me to stay in school, which I did, and I was able to better myself in getting a good education. And I'm a proud capitalist today because I came from poverty. I educated myself, and I opened 6 drugstores, and I opened a respiratory company, I opened a shipping company, and I created hundreds of jobs for people in my community. In fact, I still employ a lot of people in my community. And I needed those minimum wage jobs so that I could deliver pharmaceuticals to senior citizens at home without giving them a delivery charge. I had to pay maintenance people to come in and clean the pharmacy up every single day. But my heavens, how things have changed. We talk about the high cost of housing in the state of California. How's that happened? Well, look at all the fees and all the regulations that we've placed on home builders. It was this legislature that was responsible for stealing redevelopment funds. 20% set aside, to remember what that was used for? To provide low to moderate income housing for people in the state of California. We are to blame for that higher housing cost. We and we alone in the state of California. Poverty is a real problem today in the state of California, but this bill that raises the so-called minimum wage just won't fix that. I think it's even a misnomer to call it a minimum wage. We should be calling it a starting wage, because most people that get the starting wage don't end up keeping the starting wage, because most people acquire new skill sets that allow them to get paid more, they become managers, they make a better living, they get benefits. Look at the homeless population that exists here just in Sacramento. The encampments that sit here at the Ivory Tower, that we have to walk over bodies just to get here into the building. By enacting this new starting wage, you're going to be seeing a higher homeless population. And while I applaud my colleagues for their desire to make sure working families have enough to live on, this bill will have the effect of putting people out of work. As I travel through my communities, I see boarded up restaurants. Coco's gone. Mimi's restaurants gone. For lease signs in all of our commercial shopping centers, the small businessmen have given up. They've either thrown up their arms and given up, or they've moved out of state where the business environment is much better. Even our own governor doesn't believe that raising the minimum wage is a smart thing to do. I'll quote him. "The net impact of an increased minimum wage on California's economy and state budget is likely to be negative. For the economy, losses from higher production costs to business would be partially offset by consumption boosts from wealthier minimum wage workers, but we should overall see a slower employment growth. This would lead to slower personal income growth and an anticipated negative impact on taxes collected." In the studies that I've seen, 45% of those that receive the minimum wage in California do not live in poverty. They live with relatives where the average income for that family exceeds $40,000 a year. Now, in our local labor committee, and I appreciate just a little bit of respect, ladies and gentlemen, as I listen to your comments, and I hope that you'll listen to mine as we take everybody's comments into consideration. My dear friend from San Francisco, we were in the Labor Committee earlier, and he made this nexus that we've seen over the past years, a decrease in unemployment by 2%, and he attributed that to the raising of the minimum wage. And I appreciate those comments. I don't agree with those comments. I think we're comparing apples and oranges as we look at the growth of these high sector jobs, these high paying jobs in Silicon Valley, in the medical industry, in Hollywood. It dwarfs if you look at the bottom sector and seeing the kind of growth that they have. And then we have transportation as a special hearing here to try to raise money to fix our crumbling infrastructure, as my senator from Orange County pointed out, that we're going to be asking our citizens to be taxed by approximately the same amount that this bill is going to cost, roughly $4 billion. A state that is still struggling from the Great Recessions. Some counties, including my friend from Imperial County, have unemployment rates that still exceed 21%. Our underemployed population still continues to grow. Our kids are graduating from colleges and can't find jobs commensurate with their education. People need work, and this bill will tell small business owners who are faced with higher costs and more regulations they shouldn't even bother to open or expand. California has become a place companies just don't want to come to. According to the survey among chief executives of California, according to the CEOs, is the worst state in the union to do business in. One CEO even said California's regulation, taxes, and costs will leave only tech, life sciences, and entertainment industries as the only viable ones left. And for the second year in a row, the American Tort Reform Association identified California as the #1 judicial hellhole because of the lack of tort reform. This bill, my friends, is a feel-good measure, but our small businesses still have challenges that are forcing them to close or not expand. We have the highest workman's comp costs in the country. New paid leave rules that we've adopted have hurt many small businesses in my counties. We have the highest gas prices in the country because of our regulations and our high gas taxes. Our housing costs are out of control, which I mentioned before, and our healthcare costs are skyrocketing because we keep giving more benefits to people without consideration as to who is going to pay the bill. And now we're going to raise the starting wage to a point that will make it impossible for many small businesses to operate. Let's consider the impact of this measure by asking who is the typical worker who gets hired for the minimum wage. High school students, like myself, I used to be a dishwasher, used to find a job during the summer, but this will make it nearly impossible for our teenagers to find work that teaches them the value of showing up, working hard, and developing a work ethic that can make them productive throughout their careers. Senior citizens who need to supplement their income, they're living longer than they expected to, aren't going to be able to find jobs because small businesses won't be able to afford them. And single parents, these are the ones that really do need the help. Living paycheck to paycheck, 7.2% of all the people making the minimum wage won't be able to find jobs because companies won't be able to afford them. California's success was built on a strong middle class, but we're squeezing them out of existence. Things that have worked, the federal income tax credit has helped many poor people with $4,000 credits. I have a bill in the legislature that gives renters, low-income renters, income tax credits for the money that they pay for their high rent, the $1,500. But who will be hurt by this bill? Certainly farm workers. How many will be lost to machines that can pick the fruit instead of our humans? Restaurants, how many waiters and waitresses and servers will lose their jobs to iPads? How many of you have been into restaurants like Red Robin and Applebee's lately? There's no waiters or waitresses anymore. You order on an iPad. You put your credit card through the iPad, and that's how you pay your bill. They're getting wise to technology as wages go up and technology goes down. As a businessman, as a capitalist myself, I understand that these businesses are going to do what they need to survive. Hotels and motels. How many workers will be put out of work when the industry moves to self-service cleaning as an exchange for lower rates? Landscape workers. How many people that take care of our lawns and landscaping will be out of work because customers won't be able to afford a 33% increase in the minimum wage? This bill, my friends, hurts those it pretends to help. And I'm going to quote Microsoft founder Bill Gates, who recently warned, "You have to be a bit careful. If you raise the minimum wage, you're encouraging labor substitution and you're going to buy machines that automate things." My friends, industry is already doing this. 7,000 McDonald's restaurants in Europe are using kiosks for people to order and pay for their food. Amazon recently reported that they're going to start buying robots and replacing humans that are pulling the orders for Amazon. The president of the Restaurant Association recently talked about the automation that's coming to the restaurant industry. If they haven't adapted to the technology, they're actually looking at technology as an option, as a way to cut down on human costs. He went on to say that restaurants will buy chopped food that is already pre-chopped rather than hiring people to do the same because of the high minimum wage. So what are the choices of our small businesses? Many of those businesses that employ minimum wage workers have extremely tight margins, a very delicate balance. They can cut the hours of their employees, they can eliminate jobs, they can raise prices, they can stop plans to expand or hire more people, or worse, they could just move out of state and open up in other states or other countries. This legislature has always been big on studies. Why don't we listen to the experts when it comes to the minimum wage? According to the University of New Hampshire Survey Center, 72% of U.S. economists oppose a $15 minimum wage. 5 out of 6 economists have said the wage level will negatively affect teenage employment. 2/3 said the minimum wage of $15 would make it more difficult for small businesses to stay in business. MIT and Texas A&M studies showed that increasing the minimum wage actually reduces the number of jobs. Higher minimum wages lead to lower rates of job growth. A San Diego State University study found that the minimum wage increases are likely to hurt low-skilled workers as the increases eliminate those jobs first. And lastly, the bill will have real impacts on our state budget because of labor contracts, exempt workers that would see their wages go from $20 to $30 an hour, not to mention the compaction levels that this will create amongst our 360,000 employees. We just made IHSS employees whole on cutbacks from prior years, and this bill will require more money to be spent by state government. According to the Department of Finance, they estimated at least $3.6 billion and $400 more for Medi-Cal costs, which are not identified, added the cost to further increase the pay to IHSS workers, the DD services workers, child care and preschool workers, seasonal fire workers. The question that I've asked is, how are we going to pay this $4 billion price tag? Will it come from transportation? Will it come from public safety? Will it come from the DD community that always seems to get the short end of the stick? Or is this legislature going to do what it's done in the past and basically said, let's just increase taxes on our citizens? Members, colleagues, this is a piece of feel-good legislation, but it's wrong, it isn't right, it will put people out of work, and it will keep people from even entering the workforce. Please show some common sense and vote no on this bill that will keep people from finding a paying job in our wonderful state.